Hello everyone, and welcome to Dark Natter, the podcast where we hack apart and examine the grisly remains of your favourite works of dark fiction. I am John Richter, as usual, and I am delighted, honoured and excited to be joined today by... I didn't give you a very good cue then, did I, to introduce yourself? I apologise. Donna, please introduce yourself, if you would not mind.
So my name is Donna Morfett, and I believe I am known as a big book influencer, which means that I read lots and I support authors in various different ways.
Yeah, it's dead cool what you do. Like, you have... There's probably things I'm unaware of, actually, but I know, for example, you have a really good new Facebook group that you've set up in relatively recently, I feel like.
Just before Christmas, I think.
What is your group called? Remind or tell the listeners.
It is called Donna's Interviews, Reviews and Giveaways.
And one of the reasons it's a really cool group is because it's not just that. I'm in a few of those kind of Facebook group things. As I guess as a writer, you sort of get invited to some, which is great. And a lot of them are people talking about writing, and there's a bit of people, writers doing giveaways, giving books away. But you do a lot of kind of YouTube interviews face to face with writers. And I was lucky enough to appear in one. And obviously I've watched quite a lot of them. And it's very interesting. It's just a really good way of kind of getting to, because there's people whose books I've read, and you're used to the writers just like the name on the cover, and it's the writer. But it's quite exciting and interesting to be able to kind of hear them talk and be themselves sometimes.
Yeah, and also to learn that they're not all psychos, despite what they write about.
I was going to say, that they are in some cases.
Yeah, so far not. So far they're all lovely.
Are you slightly disappointed by that? Were you secretly hoping there would be some like real cases?
No, actually, because it would be really awkward to interview them.
That's a good point, actually. You didn't want someone going off on a big rant. And then, so yeah, you've got the interviews, you've got the kind of Facebook page, you are very active on Twitter, and you retweeted something of mine today, so thanks for that. Much appreciated. Of course,
always. And I shared it to Facebook as well.
Which I clearly haven't even noticed and haven't said thanks for. What a dick. Thanks very much for that. And for you, this is like kind of this is a thing you do on the side of your main job because you are passionate about books and reading?
Yes. Yeah, literally just because, I'm furloughed from my actual job. So it just fills the time, I guess.
No, fantastic. Well, it's any support you are giving to me and other writers is hugely appreciated. And it's good that, I suppose, there is a perception in the world that writing and reading is a bit of not a dying art exactly, but is certainly becoming less popular as a pastime, and there's less people reading books. And you kind of extrapolate that further, and there's this kind of stereotypical view that, only old people read books and younger people don't, they're too busy on Instagram and blah, blah, blah. And clearly that is not the case. There are young people like you who are avid readers and want to shout about the books that they like, which is ace.
Yeah, and apparently reading during the lockdown went up, or book sales went up massively. So it's not dying, thankfully.
Yeah, which is brilliant. And there's a kind of, there's the sub debate, which is the old like ebook versus hard copy thing. And a lot of people will sort of say, I prefer the hard copy to an ebook, but they recognise that the ebook's very convenient. And I kind of, not bothered, just as long as people are still reading, because it would be a shame if that sort of dwindled away from the world because everyone was too busy watching YouTube videos or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't get that. As long as people are reading, what does it matter what they're reading or what they're reading on? I don't understand it.
Yeah, having said that, I suppose it is good, I think, that there's been this kind of, it hasn't gone completely down the Kindle route, or that, I suppose I shouldn't advertise a product, the e-reader hasn't gone down the e-reader. There are other e-readers available, I just don't know what the name of any of them is.
Kobo, I think, is one.
Yes, it is.
That's the only one I know.
Yeah, no, but it's weird, isn't it? It's become kind of similar. I call it a Kindle instead of I should say e-reader. But yeah, if that had completely replaced books, you wouldn't have, I don't know, nerdy bookshelves like this thing I've got in the background, for example. So it's great to have you on the show, Donna. Thanks for joining us. And of course, what are we here to do? We're here to discuss your favourite piece or pieces or series of sinister, dark, murky, gory, horrible, unpleasant fiction. Whereas I will act as a representative of the Hall of Pain trademark. It's not a trademark because I nicked it from somewhere else. And I will assess whether your pitch is worthy of a place in its hallowed, haunted halls. What, pray tell, are you here to pitch today, Donna?
I am here to pitch the author, Mark Tilbury.
Ah, fantastic. And I have to, it's a bit like in a formal corporate meeting, I have to, declare an interest here. I may not be able to be quite as impartial as I should be as a Hall of Pain representative, because Mark, for a bit of time, was on the same kind of indie publisher label as I've had some books released with. So we were sort of briefly kind of label mates. But of course, in true, unsupportive dick style, I didn't read any of Mark's books for ages because you get, excuses, life, busy. You've got loads of your to-be-read pile is this towering, teetering, monstrosity. So, and interestingly, I think I can say this, the lady who runs said publisher, I once asked her what books by writers on this label would you recommend? And she said, you should read some Mark Tilbury. So he came highly recommended. So I finally sorted that out. And very recently, obviously, as preparation for the show, I read Abattoir of Dreams, which was ace. Thoroughly enjoyed it. But maybe, just to quickly explain who Mark is a writer, of course, but I believe born and raised in Oxfordshire, where his books are set. And he's, I think, after his dalliance with that kind of indie label, his more recent releases is back to self-publishing. But when you look, as I often do, enviously on his Amazon page, you can see that he is incredibly successful in the self-publishing world. He's got tons of great reviews and lots of good, a very strong reputation, thoroughly deserved. Sometimes known as Twisted Tilbury. I've spotted.
That's right. That's his hashtag.
Which is a good one. But what is it, Donna, that you in particular like about Mark and his work?
So I think the biggest thing is because he tackles subjects that most people say that they won't ever write about, quite often in child abuse. Yeah. But he does it in a way that is, it's nice, it's good to read, it's, gripping. And he's also written other stuff that, just generally you wouldn't expect to read about and enjoy, but you do, because he writes it in such a way that, you can't put it down.
Yeah, I agree. Well, certainly my limited, I've read one of his books so far. That was definitely my experience, was the subject matter, like in that particular book, there was a child abuse big angle to the story. We won't go too far into spoiler territory, but I can certainly say that. And this is hard to explain. Although I am, a lover of dark fiction, and I often talk about that stuff, there's a really weird distinction between dark / a bit daft and funny, which is where I normally would go, zombie fiction or whatever, versus properly dark, serious, real world subjects, which sometimes I find, I suppose understandably, quite heavy, and I wouldn't necessarily choose that as my kind of go-to. So when I realised the book was going in this direction, there was a bit of me that was like, oh God, this is going to be quite tough to read. But actually, it wasn't, because the book was so well written and so gripping and so good. So I didn't find it hard going at all, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. And I think Abattoir is 3 years old now. And the books he's written since are darker than that. So if you think that's dark, then they've got darker, but better.
Yeah, that's interesting. And there's a thing there about like writers getting better as they go along. It doesn't always happen to all of them. Hopefully in my case, I'm doing the same thing, not getting worse. But it's great if you feel a sense that his books are on a kind of upward curve, and he's really at the top of his game. That's really good.
Yeah, he's number one at the minute on a violence and crime category on Amazon.
Amazing.
And he has been for his latest book, Song of the Psychopath, and has been for a week since it's been out, I think. and I think he's a number one bestseller in something. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, his latest one, that was pretty dark as well.
Oh, I can imagine. Then that's called Song of the Psychopath, and we will give Mark the plug if that's recently out. Is it, Donna? That's a new release, isn't it?
That was the 4th of February, I think, that came out.
So at the time of recording, just for anyone who's listening to this at a different time, 4th of February. Today's date is 13th of February.
Yeah.
2021. So so in the UK, we're in the middle of lockdown, pandemic, coronavirus, everyone stuck at home, not allowed to do anything. So reading is bringing us all a lot of joy and escape, really, at the moment, I guess. I think I'm right in saying, this is again from my Googling, I think Mark has got 10 books out, unless you know differently.
Song of the Psychopath was his 10th.
Brilliant. Oh, that's a good milestone to get to.
Yeah.
I will quickly list them here, actually. You've got The Eyes of the Accused, Torment, The Last One to See Her, You Belong to Me, The Revelation Room, The Key to Death's Door, The Abattoir of Dreams, The Liar's Promise, A Prayer for the Broken, and Song of the Psychopath, which is a strong set of titles, I would say.
Yeah. And except for 2, they're all standalones as well, and they're all completely different.
Oh, that's cool, actually. This is not a criticism of others, by the way, but you sometimes find that people, I don't know, they write a book, it is successful and well received, so they kind of stick to, you get a recurring character, you get the same detective all the way through the books. I've written, other than one sequel, all my books are standalone. So I kind of like it when you see other people who do the same thing, lots of standalone stories. I guess it's a bit more variety in some ways.
Yeah, but Mark sneaks in little hints to his previous books, and the Bunty line he mentions in later books, which is cool because you're like, oh, I remember that from another one.
Yeah, no, that's good. And that's a very, there's a few writers who've done that kind of wider mythos thing. We've talked on this show about Stephen King, H.P. Lovecraft, standalone books, but that briefly touch on, it's almost like a bit of a, what would you call it, like an Easter egg for the readers or for the fans. But that's really cool. Have you read all of his books then, Donna?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant, though. I love that.
I'm a beta reader for him now. So I read Abattoir, and then I read his back catalogue because it was amazing. But there was only 3, I think, at the time. And then I think I read the rest, and now I beta read for him.
Oh, fantastic. It might be worth, actually, if there's any listeners who are not aware of some of these terms, just as a quick, behind the scenes of the publishing thing. So, and of course, this is where I'm rubbish at my own job as a writer, and you'll probably know more better than me. So beta reading is basically, you've written a book and you want to get some constructive feedback on it. And you've found out that if you ask your mum tells you that it's really good. So you need something more constructive from a more impartial reader. So what writers do is they will, if we're lucky, be able to get some helpful people like yourself who will offer to beta read for us, which basically means read the draft of the book and hack it apart, basically, and tell us what works, what doesn't work, what do you like, what do you not like. And that can be really useful feedback. And of course, what you want there, although it can be, ego bruising, you want to get the real sort of, what's the crap bits that need fixing.
Yeah. Like characters and plot holes and little things that, you just like, that wouldn't happen, or, that's crazy. You can't do that.
The plot holes thing is interesting as well. I suppose I always thought that there would be some sort of process that would ensure a plot hole could never make it into publication. There'd be some review by a, I don't know, all-powerful supercomputer. But in reality, that's not what happens at all. You've got the person who wrote it, the person who edits it, and any beta readers. So if you don't have that, if you've just got 2 people working on a book, you totally could miss something and have a gaping, huge, embarrassing plot hole that makes it through. And of course, there's loads of famous examples, isn't there, of stories that have, I think the one was Robinson Crusoe. He swims out to some wrecked ship to get supply, to explore it or whatever, and then he swims back to shore, and then he's just got all this stuff from the ship, and he forgot to explain how all this cargo was, like, you just swam with it. It doesn't make any sense. But anyway.
Yeah.
For the record, I'm not slagging off Robinson Crusoe. It's a very good book and well written. Yes, I can only dream of that level of success and recognition. But anyway. And I guess, Donna, one thing I was going to ask you about as a wider question, I suppose, is not just in terms of Mark's, I guess you would call Mark's books psychological thrillers. Is that a fair description?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
They definitely are.
With a slight, because he has a slight supernatural element as well, which are unusual. You don't get that very often in crime thrillers or psychological thrillers.
Yes, I agree with it. And actually, again, I suppose, insider kind of view, that's because publishers don't like it. So my first book, my publisher asked me, and I obviously agreed, to remove a paranormal element from the book, because the belief is that if you include sort of paranormal, otherworldly, ghost type stuff, then you will damage your sales because it will be less appealing than sort of more, what's the word, realistic crime. And I'm sure that's true. So I'm sure they do that for good reason. But it's good that Mark hasn't done that and he's left that stuff in, because it makes his books interesting and unique.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so if we're on that kind of psychological thriller category that really gets into the kind of the mind of the main character and some quite dark places and suffering is explored, what do you think makes for a good psychological thriller as opposed to, I guess, a more mediocre one?
I mean, I suppose the first thing is the characters. I think really hating the baddie and really rooting for the good guy helps. Obviously, it's not too complicated, and I guess like red herrings along the way to keep you guessing as well, so that it's, as you're reading it, you're trying to figure it out, but you can't because the author has led you along a path that's, not going to help in the end.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And that thing about hating the bad guy is interesting. So I, on account of being weird, I often find, 90% of things that I watch or read, I'm always a bit on the villain's side, which, you kind of like, because, let me try and explain this, because the villain is usually, in a way, the underdog. So if you think of Batman and the Joker, like Batman is a big, rich muscle man. The Joker is a scrawny, downtrodden, mentally ill guy. So there's a kind of an element of like, I'm kind of rooting for the villain because I sort of want them to win. And also there's an element of inevitability in the story, isn't there? Very often the good guy wins, or doesn't have to be a guy in the gender sense, but the side of good usually triumphs over the side of evil in a traditional story. Therefore, you're a bit like, oh, boring. I kind of want the villain to sort of maybe win. So because I have this mindset, I tend to find that when there's a villain who I absolutely hate for real and really want them to get their comeuppance, that's quite rare. So it's always kind of to be cherished when it happens. And without going into too many spoilers, in The Abattoir of Dreams, I really, really hated the villain in that book. Horrible, vile, despicable piece of work.
And not only from literally from the first page, you can't stand him. Yeah. And then as it goes further into the story, you learn what he's done, and you're like, yeah, you're an absolute arsehole. And
it just gets worse. Proper scumbag. In some ways, in a weird way, I was kind of sad that he was such a good, horrible villain that I kind of wanted him to come back again in another book. But
no. And Mark does that. All of the monsters in his books are real monsters. Sometimes you can read a book and, like you say, you can root for the bad guy, or, you kind of hope that they don't get caught because you're like, although they're doing really wrong, really bad stuff, you can kind of understand why. But in Mark's books, these people are like, nah, they need to be stopped because they're so evil.
There's a thing as well. I think this is maybe going against the grain slightly. There's a trend or a view, a consensus has emerged, I think, in recent years, that you've got to have three-dimensional villains, or you've got to have these almost like shades of grey, and if you have one absolutely good character and one absolutely bad character, this in some way is a bad thing for the story, and you need to be able to relate to the villain and almost sympathise with them. And there's loads of stories where this is the case, and they're really interesting. So I'm not saying it's wrong, but I don't think there's anything. I also don't think there's anything wrong with just having a real nasty, vile scumbag. I still think they've got a place in stories because it incites a strong reaction from the reader, which is what you want, I guess.
Yeah, I think especially for a book to be memorable, sometimes if they're just like, nah, then you'll close it and then you'll forget about it. Whereas if you've had a character that you've hated for 300 odd pages, then when you close a book, you're still thinking about them because they've made you so angry.
Yeah, and you're so pleased if they get their deserved, comeuppance at the end, which that doesn't necessarily always happen. So, Donna, in Mark's 10-book repertoire, do you have a specific favourite?
I always say that The Abattoir of Dreams is my favourite, but that's only because it was the first one I read and fell in love with, and it blew me away like no other book had before. But his most recent books are just incredible. So it's hard to choose, but Abattoir probably would be my favourite.
No, that's brilliant. And that clearly is why you recommended that one specifically then for me to read. So thank you for the recommendation because it was really good.
Yeah, it was my first time book as well. So that's special as well. So that'll always be my first.
Yeah, no, fantastic, fantastic. One thing I should ask you as well, just to blow myself away and any listeners, how many books do you read? Are you, like, on average, would you say?
In what time period?
Let's say average number of books in a month.
It depends on whether I'm at uni or not. So if I'm at uni, then maybe 15. And if I'm not at uni, it could be 30 or more.
To me, that is staggering. Like, honestly, my reading input is down to one a month now. If I'm lucky, I can do in one thing a month, which is pathetic. But I can't, yeah, because you're kind of blitzing them in like almost like a book a day.
Yeah. I read one book in 4 hours one morning. The Last Thing to Burn, I read in 4 hours.
You can do, I had a little phase where I trying, you try and do different things, don't you? And you're getting into this whole world of writing. So you're trying to learn about the promotional side, which I struggle with, to be honest. And I was doing you need to have a blog. So you should have a website with a blog. So I've got a website, which I'm quite happy with. And I had to go at blogging for a bit. And I don't know, it's just not for me. I just wasn't, it felt like I was investing loads of time in writing blog posts when I could just be writing books. So in the end, a bit of fun for 6 months, but then I stopped. And one of the things I did a bit of on the blog was reviewing people's books. And so, yeah, typical fashion, I suppose. You end up with, oh my God, I've committed to reading and reviewing that book on Sunday and I haven't even started it. And now it's Saturday morning. What am I going to do? And you can sit there and hammer a book in a day if you're focused on it. But it is, to keep that going as a standard level of reading is very impressive to me.
Well, I have to generally because I'm in so many art groups. So generally I get sent a book that I need to read and review by a certain time. So I have to keep up, otherwise I'll be swamped. Yeah,
you've honed it. And actually there's another term we should try and clarify. Can you tell the listeners what an ARC group is?
So when the book has been written, it's been edited, it's gone to its beta readers, and it's at a point that the author is happy to send it out, then generally, although John doesn't, they have an art group of, it can be anywhere between, say, 15 and sometimes up to 70 members. The author will send their book out for free, electronically usually, to get a review in time for the day of release. So when it's released, it's already got some reviews ready, and it's an honest review. It's never, we're not paid. We're not asked to give 5 stars if we don't think it deserves it. It's just an honest review.
Yeah, it's advanced reader copy, isn't it? ARC stands for advanced reader copy. And yeah, I think whether this is just through blundering and doing it wrong, I think in the last couple of books I had out, the publisher arranged for that to happen, as which is very helpful. So to get some advanced, preemptive reviews and a bit of feedback. But I haven't set up my own group. Maybe I should talk to you about that and should do that. I have lots to learn still about this whole interesting industry.
Well, the only other thing that you get a benefit from the art group is you've got a ready-made promotional group. You know, they'll share your posts and they'll leave their reviews and they'll share them around all the different book groups. So you've got your own group ready to shout about your book because they loved it generally. So
no, that's awesome. And even that, it's just for anyone who's listening, it's you thrive on. That's almost the main thing that you want, need, crave as a writer is positive reviews mainly on Amazon, and obviously there's other platforms, Goodreads and so on. But it's not just because that's the only way you're ever going to achieve any sort of recognition or sales, is if your book is well reviewed, and that then it triggers certain algorithmic promotional things, and up the charts you hope. But also it's just nice, isn't it? You know, if you've written something, you just want people to say they liked it. And you do, you know, certainly I don't think any writer, certainly not me, would ever want a dishonest review. So you wouldn't want somebody just lobbing a 5-star on as a favour, because, you know, and you get a bit of that on social media, you know, like people like, hey, nudge, hey, give my book a 5-star and I'll do you a 5-star. That's bad. So you'd much rather have an honest, constructive 3-star than a fake 5. But what you do sometimes get is you get the dreaded, like, 1-star because Amazon delivered it late. You go, God, you really? God damn it.
I've noticed now that they've started putting on when you review a book not to review the delivery or anything. So they've actually started to put, when you're reviewing a book, then review the book, don't review the delivery of it.
That is good, actually, and helpful. I didn't actually know they'd done that, because that is obvious. And, you know, it's not people's fault necessarily, because they maybe they sort of don't differentiate between the creator of the thing and the shop that they're buying it from. Maybe people sort of blur it a bit. But yeah, interesting. There's a whole bit of a sideline we could go into in some of the weird oddities of the industry. But
I've learned so much in the last 6 months. It's crazy.
Well, can you think of anything else that we've not mentioned that's like a thing you wouldn't know until you find it out, sort of thing?
Let's think. Authors are needy people, and they need their ego stroking pretty much.
I can confirm that this is correct.
That they all suffer from imposter syndrome. I've learned that.
Yep.
That Amazon, although it is a great platform, is also its own worst enemy and tries to fight authors regularly.
Yeah, there's some odd things that are done on certain platforms, kind of thing. You just wonder why processes have been set up in certain ways.
And just the crazy cost of promotion. You know, if you can't afford to use Facebook ads, then it's really hard for authors, I find, and the cost of them are insane. So,
and also there's an element of, I suppose it's true with any sort of advertising in any area of the world, but so I am lucky that I have a sort of I work as an accountant as my day job, so I'm relatively well paid, so I'm not like starving artist. So what that means is I've got a bit of disposable income that I could chuck at promotion if I wanted to. But there's an element of like, well, ad services, like you say, whether it's, you know, whichever the platform it is, you can just spend as much as you want on this ad thing. And it's like, well, how do I know if it's working really? And, you know, 20 quid, 50 quid, 100 quid, a billion quid, like, where do you stop? It's almost like could get a bit addictive. So I kind of, but then the flip side of this is probably why I'm not a bestseller, because I don't do enough of this stuff. But it does feel like there's just so many avenues out there that you could go down as regards the promotional stuff. You know, there's people that will make you a trailer, or there's people that will design your cover for you, or there's, you know, you can do a blog, you can have a website, you can have a Facebook page. So I guess because you're trying to blunder through this like forest of, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? I'm an imposter. What am I doing? When you do find people who are really real people who have read your stuff and said nice things about it, it's amazing. So thank you.
Yeah, I do love your book, so it's good.
Hey.
The rabbit hole that kept me up till 2 a.m.
That was great. I loved it when you said that. That made my day. That comment. It really did, actually.
I know. I never stay up. I'm rubbish. Past 11 o'clock, I'm sleep usually. So to stay up till 2 was some doing.
We had a really childish throwback evening recently where me and some of my mates stayed up late to watch the Royal Rumble live. You know, we're like all on a Zoom call watching it. And honestly, like it started off going, yeah, Royal Rumble, this is going to be really funny. Yeah, let's drink cans and act like teenagers. And then by the time it was halfway done, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. It was just like 4 old men, just really sad and wanted to go to bed. Getting old is rubbish, isn't it? Never mind.
Yeah, it's that.
So what about your upcoming reading? I suppose I don't know whether you have to like keep it a bit secret or not, but have you got any books on your close to the top of your to be read pile that you're excited about?
Well, actually, I will be interviewing Peter May at the end of March. So I have his new book to read in advance, and it sounds incredible. So I'm very much looking forward to reading that.
Fantastic. And you've got him on one of your interviews as well.
Yeah.
That's
How cool is that?
That is cool. That is really, really cool. I'd always worry that if I had somebody like, is this a backhanded insult to the guests that I've had on the show? Yes, it is. So I better not say it. I was going to say, if I had someone who I was like really kind of like starstruck by, I'd probably go into like a bumbling, nervous wreck. But I'm sure you'll handle it with your usual cool self.
Yeah, because this is one that's been not directly through him. This is through an agent. His people contacted me to arrange the interview with him. So I'm like, okay, that's not at all terrifying.
Ace, you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Yeah, I hope so.
No, you definitely will. Well, actually, maybe to just directly plug you and your stuff is, I know you mentioned the name of the Facebook group earlier, but is there how would listeners find your output, for example, your interview show?
I mean, they're on YouTube, the interviews, then most of them are on Instagram if they're under an hour. I can't be bothered to edit the ones that aren't. And then I now have a podcast as well.
I did not know this. Is that the podcast, like the podcast version of the interviews?
That's exactly what it is, yeah.
Got it. Fantastic. I'm glad you've got into the whole podcasting arena.
Yeah, well, that's what you do during a pandemic, apparently, is create a podcast, so I didn't want to feel left out.
It's fun as well, isn't it? I like doing this, and I like all fun. Like the editing bit is kind of interesting when you get into that as well, like sticking a bit of music on it and stuff, but...
Yeah, I have to try and edit a 2-hour interview the other day with Alan Gorvin that descended into, well, it wasn't broadcastable, let's put it that way.
Right, you should do like the outtakes, like the X-rated version. But yeah, we sometimes me and Liam sometimes it's like you've covered a subject in half an hour, and other times it's like, oh, we talked for 3 hours there, that's going to take a while to edit. Jeez.
Yeah, luckily Stu edits the ATM podcast in a weekend, although he never edits a 5-star bar. Apparently it's impossible. It's very rude.
He just leaves it in, like, what's the word?
Yeah,
carnage.
It is,
yeah. So what would people search for, Donna, to find your interviews either on the podcast or on YouTube?
YouTube, just search my name. I can't seem to change that. And so just Donna Morfett. And then the podcast is called Little Miss Morfett Talks to Authors.
Excellent. That is a good title. I like it. Morfett is Morfett, isn't it?
Yeah. That was McGarvey Black's idea, and it stuck. So, yeah.
She's done well there. I like that. I think that's a good suggestion. Little Miss Morfett. And then I guess you could have a graphic of you sat on a tuffet, whatever one of them is. I don't know what a tuffet looks like. No one knows. With your questions.
And Owen Mullin, when I done his interviews, put on the couch with Donna as a hashtag, which I think is really cool as well.
Yeah, that is. In effect, it is like a virtual chat show for writers and fans of, I guess, kind of dark fiction in a way, because that's loosely the sort of. Is that right, Donna? Am I right in saying that you exclusively read sort of dark fiction?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, mostly because I read arcs of crime fiction authors, so
Yeah.
I don't tend to have time to veer away. But anyway, that I'm doing a forensics degree, so obviously that is where my interest is.
Yeah, brilliant. Which is sounds like a really cool degree as well. I'm well jealous. Does that mean you'll be like a scene of crime officer, and you'll be sort of or a pathologist or something in the future?
Scene of crime, if there were any jobs going, which there aren't, I was looking the other day.
Okay.
Pathologist, you have to do a medical degree. So you have to do forensics and you have to do medicine to be able to do that. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's a long investment, that, isn't it? The closest I'll ever come to that is you can get forensic accountants. So it's like, like tracing money back to the mafia and stuff. Probably still quite boring.
That sounds really fun, actually.
It does sound pretty. It sounds pretty. I wonder if there's any books about forensic accounting, and if not, maybe I should try and. But right, okay, idea for next book. Let me make a note of that. I guess this is the point of the show where we must make our final decision on entry into the Hall of Pain. Donna, would you like to sum up your pitch of Mark Tilbury and his 10 sinister works and why you feel they are worthy of a place in the hallowed hall?
So, Mark Tilbury is an author that is known as Twisted Tilbury, which is enough on its own, I believe. He writes about things that normally you wouldn't enjoy reading about. He writes about the worst in society, but writes it in a way that is enjoyable. Also, his art group is called The Twisted Annies because he likens us to Annie Wilkes from Misery. So what more could you want?
That is a solid pitch, and I'll just confirm with Liam, who I've got on a special speed dial, just check it. Yes, I can confirm that Mark Tilbury and all of his books have been happily accepted into the Hall of Pain. What I don't know is, because most of the stuff that's in the Hall of Pain is either, there's a few people who are sadly dead, and there's a few, mainly it's fictional people, like Michael Myers, he's obviously not real.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of real, actual living people now, which Mark now is one. So I guess that is his life ruined. He's going to have to say goodbye to his family and friends. He's going to have to go and live in a dank subterranean cell with only his own books.
I don't think he would mind because he is sometimes probably scared of his Annies because we always threaten to drive up to Cumbria and hobble him.
So what you're saying is he might welcome... he can lock himself in the cell for protection. Oh, well, in that case...
Even his girlfriend's become an Annie, so...
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to offer him... How many people are in the group, the Annies?
20-odd, 27, I think. He just brought another couple in, so...
Good Lord.
Yeah.
So I'm just imagining the horror of Misery and Annie Wilkes times by 20 odd. That is, the guy needs a cell to hide in, definitely.
He has a picture of Annie Wilkes as his banner for his art group. So it's pretty cool.
That is brilliant. Oh, that's a film. Well, we've done Stephen King on the show, you see. So it's whether we could do Misery specifically. I need to check the rules that don't exist because we haven't written any. Well, Donna, before I let you escape unscathed from the clutches of the Hall of Pain, is there anything else you wanted to plug or convey to the listeners?
I don't think so.
In which case, I will thank you very much for making an appearance on the show. And this will probably go out in, I don't know, maybe like a month or two, because we've got a few episodes already in the pipeline. But
well, thank you for having me.
Not at all. Absolute pleasure. And good luck with all the zillions of things you've got on the go. Degree, Facebook group, art groups, beta reading.
Yeah. Someone needs to remind me about the degree first, I think, after that then.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah, it's good to get that under your belt. And we will speak to you again, Donna.
You will.
Thank you very much, and goodbye. thanks once again to Donna for making an appearance on the show. And any Liam fans, please don't worry. Rest assured, he will, of course, be back, like he always is, next time. For more dark natterings. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like to support us, the bestest way you can do it is to leave us a 5-star review on your podcast listening service, or even contact us directly on Twitter at @dark_natter, or on Instagram at darknatterpodcast, and tell us we're doing a good job, because that'll make us feel good. But if you don't do either of those things, I still hope you enjoyed the show, and thank you for listening, and we will speak to you and pollute your ears again soon.